All right, we're recording now, and this recording will be available once the session is over. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Our very first webinar session dedicated to immigrating through French proficiency, but more specifically to a new pilot that IRCC has recently announced. So we're going to explore those avenues of immigrating through French with focus on temporary residency programs, as well as permanent residency ones. So let's start with a quick introduction here. My name is Maria Garces-Cubels. I'm an RCIC, Regulated Canadian Immigration Consultant, and I've been working with Incubate for over 5 years now, specializing in our legal and consultations team. So developing, tailoring, and providing advice to clients seeking to immigrate to Canada with focus on the economic class. I also speak Spanish, so if any of my clients feel more comfortable speaking that language, I'm happy to provide such service in Spanish. And this is our principal consultant and founder of Incubate, Mr. Basil Sauter, also an RCIC, and has many years of experience in both Canadian and US-based immigration. And let's dive into our team here. So presenting you as well our team, and the reason we like to show off this slide at the beginning of our sessions is sort of to start with our main saying here, which is that there's no one size fits all when it comes to immigration. There are many different programs, there are many different solutions, and they're not all applicable equally to every candidate seeking to immigrate to Canada. Most of us who you see here in this slide as a team originally came to Canada through temporary residency, as permanent residents even, or workers, study, or visitors. And through a way or another found our way through permanent residency all the way to citizenship, some of us. So it just comes to say that although we came from different backgrounds, nationalities, skill sets, experience, education, there is a way for everyone who's seeking to immigrate to Canada. For some of us may take longer than others, but the importance here is on understanding the system, how the government selects candidates, and what matters when it comes to immigration to Canada. So we're gonna focus on that today, specifically on Francophone immigration or French proficiency. A little bit more about us. We do have 3 licensed consultants in-house, also able and authorized to represent you in Quebec, so we can represent you and advise you all across Canada and at all provincial and territorial programs as well. And like I said, we do count with a team with many years of experience. So we've been in the Canadian immigration business for quite a while now. We have worked not only with individuals from all over the world seeking to immigrate to Canada, but also with those wanting to come temporarily as study permit holders or work permit holders, or even just to visit. And we also have quite some experience with the education field as well here in Canada. We work with a lot of DLIs, designated learning institutions, to support their staff, support their students who were quite familiarized with the student or the student aspect of things as well. We offer services in 5 different languages, so if you feel more comfortable approaching our team in any of these languages, feel free to do so, although our entire team speaks English as well. And lastly, before we jump into the details of today's session, we can assist you and represent you in many different ways. Here we've divided in our main 2 categories of representation: temporary resident services and permanent resident services. So anything from visitor visa applications to work permits, study permits, extensions of such, all the way to opening profiles at a federal or provincial level, permanent residency application, all the way to citizenship. So if you do feel like you need support or you have questions about your application, your case, and how to navigate through the system, we'll be happy to support you with that. All right, now let's dive into this topic, which focuses, like we said, on Francophone immigration, or how to immigrate to Canada through French proficiency. Let's first start with an overall on the main different ways that we have to become a permanent resident in Canada. Although it has been a changing landscape over the past few months or years, should say, since COVID. Till date, these are some of the key avenues or main avenues that we differentiate in the Canadian immigration system. And of course, all of these break down into different smaller combination of factors or smaller programs. So one of the main routes is coming as a temporary resident. So whether this is the student or worker route, there are several programs available at a provincial and federal level that will allow a temporary resident to transition into permanent residency. We can also consider the skilled professional route through one of the federal or provincial programs, mainly through selection of our profile based on previous experience, education, languages, and other factors. Business immigration is another avenue that we could consider if we qualified for one of the startup visa programs or perhaps a provincial nominee program under their entrepreneur stream. And then we jump into family immigration, including spousal sponsorship, so the sponsoring of a spouse by someone who's a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident, and family immigration for other family members, such as the parents and grandparents program, children and other eligible family members. And lastly, through the refugee or asylum class, which we're not going to focus on today's session. Actually, we'll only be focusing on the first two here. So immigrating through temporary resident status with focus on French proficiency, as well as a skilled professional with those with that French skill set. So recently, IRCC announced a Francophone minority community student pilot. The purpose or the main goal of this pilot is to attract French speakers or Francophone individuals to communities where there is not enough or there's not big enough of a Francophone community. So far, it is very specific to participating communities, which we're gonna see in a second. And it was recently announced, so it's a very new pilot that just came into effect. So that's what we wanted to dedicate a session or webinar to it, to dive into the details and fully explain for those who are interested or could be eligible for it. So the program highlights are, like I said, it became eligible, or it became in place on August 26th, so it's just a month old. A lot of students are still navigating through it, and what's worth noting is that there will be more communities added as we go. But the whole idea behind this program is to attract French speakers willing or coming to Canada to study, specifically to programs of study or universities outside of the province of Quebec that offer programs in French. Again, with the idea of increasing Francophone immigration outside of the province of Quebec, which is one of the Canadian government's main targets for the next 2 to 4 years. Now, what's kind of innovative in this program, in this pilot, is because it's a temporary residency program, originally someone coming to Canada for studies, they have to apply for study permit. And when we do so from outside Canada, you may know that there are a certain number of eligibility criteria that we need to meet, certain number of documents that we need to provide. And one of the main reasons of refusal actually is ties to home country. So in a temporary residency application, and just to cut it short here, we need to demonstrate that we have intentions to return back to our home country upon finishing our studies in Canada, our main purpose of traveling here. So unfortunately, we do see a lot of applications being refused on these grounds just because of lack of documents, or the officer did not found that what was included in the application is strong enough proof to return to their home countries. And something innovative about this program is, like we said, it's eventually become a permanent residency avenue for many, but for now we're focusing on the temporary residency aspect. So those applying for study permits under this program who receive the support of the designated learning institution, meet all the requirements that we're about to see here, that dual intent and that assessment of someone who will return to their home country does not get assessed or evaluated in a study permit application. And this is really big because it will significantly increase the approval rate for those applicants who are eligible. And of course, there is a quota for it. So not everyone will get their study permit. There's still other eligibility criteria to go through, other assessments to go through. But one of the main reasons of refusal will not longer be assessed in here, which is that dual intention of coming to Canada and wanting to stay later on, something that does really get assessed in general temporary residency application. So for now, let's focus on the temporary residency aspect here. So the initial part of the process, which is coming under study permit, getting acceptance into one of the accepted or eligible designated learning institutions. And so far, what the government has announced is that the quota between the end of this year, beginning of next year, will be for 2,300 study permits under this category. Now, there are two sets of eligibility requirements here, one being the countries, the nationalities that are eligible. So not everyone from any country of nationality is eligible to apply for it. And number two, the communities or the institutions that do welcome and do participate in the program are also limited and in probably not so known areas to many international students. So basics here. Like I said, there are a set of eligible countries that I will be showing in the next slide. The list is actually quite broad with some major contributing countries of international students to Canada being in it, which we'll see in a second. We need to have a letter of acceptance from an eligible and participating designated learning institution, college or university in Canada. And then something to keep in mind here is that if you are from an eligible country and you are seeking to complete your studies from one of these institutions, you need to inform the institution that you are applying under this pilot. There is an additional support letter or document that you would be receiving from the institution. So just heads up to make sure you inform the institution, meaning your college or university that you'll be attending here. The application must be submitted from outside Canada, so the person has to be present outside Canada at the time of application. So both the country of nationality and the physical presence of that person matters in this application. And lastly, we also need to demonstrate intermediate upper basic level of French proficiency, equivalent to a CLB5 through one of the approved French tests that IRCC has, okay? So these are the countries for now. I don't foresee the countries being, more countries being added, sorry. Like I said, the list is quite broad with countries like Republic of Congo, Egypt, Haiti, Lebanon, Morocco, Tunisia, Rwanda. So there's a lot of countries here. And it's an opportunity for those who have already that intermediate level of French proficiency and want to continue their post-secondary studies in Canada in French to open a pathway for permanent residency. Now, as for the study program, like I said, we need to inform the university, the institution, that we will be participating in the pilot so that they're aware and they issue the necessary documents and information for the student to apply for that study permit. And something to keep in mind is that the majority of the program needs to be instructed, needs to be taught in French. This means that at least 50% of it, IRCC has expressed that over 50%. So to be on the safe side, over 50% of the program, although the institution would know if you are informing them that you're participating in the pilot. But just make sure that this is explicitly informed somewhere, whether that's in the program curriculum or in the letter of acceptance, and that it is well stated that over 50% of the program will be taught in French. These also need to be post-secondary studies, so after high school and at a full-time basis, okay? And the duration of it has to be for at least 2 years of studies, okay, or 4 semesters, must lead to a degree or a diploma. And like we said, it has to be outside of the province of Quebec. So all the communities that you will see, all the institutions that we'll check in a second, are outside of the province of Quebec. Now, another main thing or another main difference between a regular study permit application versus an application under this pilot for those who are eligible is the proof of funds. So it is different based on the community or based on the place that we go to study. So based on the participating communities that do offer these programs, we will see that the proof of funds is different. There are 5 different categories. For now, they group them in groups A, B, C, D, and E. And we're gonna look into what each of these groups requires and what schools fall under each of these groups. So group A is for cities or communities with over 500,000 inhabitants, so population. Here, the 3 colleges or universities that have or fall under this group. So the biggest ones will be in Ottawa, Edmonton, and Toronto, being these the institutions that you see down here. And then depending on our family size, we will need to demonstrate certain funds. So for reference, group A is the same as the funds that we need to show for general study permit application. So the $20,635 for a single applicant. And again, this is for communities or for institutions where they're located in an area of 500,000 inhabitants or more. Okay, then we move into group B, which is 100,000 to 499,999, so right below 500,000. And we see that the proof of funds starts to drop with around 17,000, almost 18,000 being for a principal applicant. And again, for the rest of family member changes as well. So for now, there's no communities as of last week. And we checked again this morning, nothing again. So IRCC has announced that there will be more community studies, more universities and colleges added, but for now, there's none under Group B. Just for your reference, this is what the proof of funds will look like. And then we move into Group C, which is between 30,000 to 99,000 inhabitants here. For now, only University Moncton in these 3 campuses that you see below here are the ones eligible, and the funds are also a bit lower than the previous ones, still within the $17,000 for a single applicant. Group D is for those communities with under 30,000 inhabitants here. We drop a bit farther here on the funds for one applicant or single applicant to $16,000. And then for now, only a college in New Brunswick with all these campuses, so under all these communities, is eligible under this group. Okay, like I said, we will see more in the near future. And lastly, under Group E, so this is the slowest or the smaller community category here. So for those under 30,000 population, the funds to demonstrate at 16,161, which again is about 5,000 lower than what we would see for a general study permit application. So it is quite a difference, but only 2 participating colleges and universities near Saskatchewan and Ontario. For now, we'll see if this list grows in the near future. Something to note as well is that these funds will be updated on an annual basis, just like the general study permit application funds requirement will be. So we don't expect a huge increment, but we do expect some sort of increase between end of this year, beginning of next year, as it reflects the upgraded or the updated cost of living. All right, now as for the path to permanent residency, because for now we focused on how to apply for that study permit, what are the requirements for it, what are some of the exemptions that we see from general study permit applications, and then financial requirements and type of program of studies. Once we have that application together, submit it, receive an approval, come to Canada, and we complete our 2-year program, IRCC is expected to announce a pathway to permanent residency. The reason they're taking a bit longer is just because there's not really a rush yet. No one will really qualify until 2 years from now, at least, as some of these institutions do not become eligible to offer these programs starting January 2025. So we'll have to wait a little bit, but IRCC has announced a pathway to permanent residency to enable these graduates to apply for PR. We just need to ensure that we maintain temporary residency status throughout our studies and after graduation, so mainly at the time that we apply for PR. And again, just stick to those program requirements, over 50% of a program in French from one of the accepted DLIs, and to a program that leads to a degree or a diploma that's at least 2 years in duration. We can, of course, include our accompanying family members here as well. So spouse and children who are eligible and who are still within the age requirement. And like I said, there will be more details announced on the how-tos and the full requirement here, whether we will need additional testing or not. But IRCC has made clear that there will be a permanent residency pathway for these graduates who come to study in this French-speaking or growing French communities in Canada. Now, this is it for the pilot. We'll do another session once we have more details on the pathway to permanent residency. But for now, let's close the session with what are other ways for us to immigrate through French proficiency. So we'll focus now on already existing permanent residency avenues under federal and provincial levels, more specifically under the express entry system. So through express entry, we get points awarded based on our education, experience, language proficiency, and some adaptability factors as well. And something that was announced already 4 years ago, although it seems like it was just yesterday, is the additional bonus points that we get for having French in our express entry profile. The combination that needs to happen for us to get those 50 bonus points is a CLB 7, so that upper intermediate level of French through one of the accepted language French tests, which is a TEF Canada or the TCF Canada, and a CLB 5, which is an intermediate English B1 through one of the accepted language tests for English as well, which are the CELPIP General Test, IELTS General Training, or the PTE Core. Okay. Like we said, we will be getting 50 bonus points for it. And to give you some perspective, this is the same number of points as having a valid job offer supported by LMIA or by your employer here in Canada. And there another way that we actually have to first come as temporary residents and then perhaps explore the option of immigrating later on through one of the federal or provincial programs is through the LMIA exemption code C16. So most jobs in Canada will require you to have a work permit. This could be either closed or open. And if it's closed, it's mainly based on having a job offer. And most employers have to support their employees or candidates with an LMIA, which is the sponsorship process through the approval of ESDC. It is quite a process from the employer. It is not impossible whatsoever, but it does require time and dedication from their employer to get that positive LMIA and for you to be able to apply for that work permit. Good news is that there are some exemption codes that allow for the candidates, for the workers to not require that LMIA, to not require that sponsorship, and allow you directly to apply for a work permit if we need certain requirements or we fall within, we meet all of the requirements of that LMIA exemption code. This one specifically, which falls under the International Mobility Program, Francophone Mobility, is for those who can demonstrate an intermediate level of French. The level here is a little lower than the one we've mentioned earlier, a CLB 5, which translates into an intermediate or B1 level. And what requires, the requirements under this specific code are to have a job offer in any occupation, no longer has to be a qualified NOC tier, it can be in any occupation outside of the province of Quebec, demonstrate that intermediate level of French, CLB 5, and we need to do so through one of the approved tests, and apply for work permit with the general work permit requirements, so still meet the requirements to apply for work permit in terms of medical exams, criminality, etc. But the main factors being that language proficiency in French, job offer in any occupation, and the employer has to be outside of Quebec. These will exempt the employer from requiring an MIA, which nowadays is quite a lengthy process. So it is a great tool for many to come to Canada if you already have the language proficiency and have a job offer outside of Quebec. All right, and then just to close up here, a few more insights into what the categories have been for express entry. So we're talking now about federal immigration. Since last year, the government has been inviting candidates which have experience in certain categories. One of the categories which has been selected as the main one for 2023 and 2024 so far is French proficiency. So like you see here, up until August 15th, actually there was one last week as well. So we need to add one more here, but up until last week, French has been the most requested, or the category with the most number of invitations so far, and with the lowest cutoff score. If I'm not mistaken, there was one in February, dropping all the way down to 336, which, for reference, the general score for express entry, so non-category, as of today is over 500. So this gives those with that level of proficiency in French, and which perhaps cannot achieve the main score under express entry draws right now, the opportunity to immigrate through this federal system. So what we need here to be eligible or to be considered as a qualified candidate under one of these categories is to have an upper intermediate level of French, so that's CLB 7, demonstrated through one of the accepted language tests. We expect this to continue. We still have to see what the categories will be for 2025. We still don't know, but based on the immigration level plan and the target for the government to meet that 6% of Francophone immigration outside of Quebec, we expect French to remain as an active category, but we'll see. Now, before we jump into questions, just want to provide a bit more of insight into how we can help you, how we can provide you with our recommendations and assessments here. So like you've seen, there are many options. We just focused on perhaps 3 ways out of 100 that we have to immigrate to Canada as of today. So in our customized immigration assessments and consultations, we look into your circumstances, we look into your experience, your skill set, your language abilities, and we prepare a tailored report with your scenarios where we dive into what are our recommended options for your case, and we discuss them and present them in a consultation. And of course, you also have the chance to ask us any questions that you have during this consultation. But the whole idea behind consultations is to provide you with a clear understanding of what is your immigration pathway to Canada tailored to your case. Okay, like we said, there's not one size fits all when it comes to immigration. So it's important that if you are going to seek assessment, seek advice, make sure that's tailored to your case and to your circumstances. All right, so if you're interested in booking a consultation, you can do so through our website. And I'll leave our